My mother always told me that when you get near the water in your travels, always put your feet in the water. It's something that your ancestors always did. We're at St. Mary's Bay in Digby County. I've been fishing these waters for roughly 19 years. I don't have a large boat. I have a 14-foot wooden boat. It's fiberglass over wood. I don't have a hauler. I have to use whatever muscles I have. I pull one trap, and it sort of feeds a portion of my family per day. If the rights aren't defended, they're going to be taken away from us totally by the non-native governments. If there aren't any people fighting for the rights that we have, that our ancestors signed treaties protecting our rights, and if we don't protect those rights and fight for the rights today, we won't have those rights for the next generation.
It's not just a matter of telling our children to go out and break the law. That's not what we're really telling them. We're telling them to go out and exercise their inherent right the way it's supposed to be, traditionally, and with great respect. From a legal standpoint, we are teaching our children to break the law in order to do that, and it's unfortunate that it has to be that way. As long as the sun shines, as long as the rivers flow, we will stand fast to what we agree to. I'm not sure if all parties understand how deep our treaties are.
In the 1700s, the Mi'kmaq negotiated treaties with the British to protect their rights and to defend their way of life. They have been fighting to have them honored ever since. In 1999, the Supreme Court of Canada's Marshall decision recognized the treaty rights of the Mi'kmaq people to fish commercially. Non-native fishing communities felt threatened and reacted with violence. Tensions were highest near the Mi'kmaq Reserve of Burnt Church.
Fuck out of my waters! Stop harassing my people! Get the fuck out! Return to land or you're under arrest!
For 2 summers, the community stood up to assaults by non-native fishers and the government. Burnt Church insisted they had the right to manage their lobster fishery themselves. DFO, the Department of Fisheries, responded to the conflict by offering First Nation governments money to buy into the commercial fisheries. 34 out of 36 bands in the maritime provinces have signed these Marshall Agreements. Bear River First Nation is one of 2 communities that refuse.
To put it quite frankly, it was a way of assimilating us into a commercial fishery. There was no talk about the food fishery or for ceremonial purposes or small-scale fishery. This is it. This is how you're going to fish. We're going to get you out on the water. You're going to get so many lobster licenses. You're going to get so much quota. Though Marshall was based on a commercial fishing right, for us it was just so much more than it was connected to identity, our whole being, who we were. And we were hoping to introduce a whole traditional approach, but in a modernized or in today's context of bringing back some of the traditional values about the conservation of the resources, the respect for those resources, and what fishing would mean to us. And before we knew it, there was this DFO concept. And yes, it was called a Marshall Agreement or a First Nations Agreement. However, it quickly became apparent to us that this is no different than the DFO regulations.
So we, I guess, as a community, talked about that a little bit, and said, it is part of the whole assimilation process, and that these agreements are at some point, I think, going to be used against us in the court of law. That it will be watering down or defining what our treaty means, what our inherent right means to access to the fisheries.
It's very much now a corporate globalized agenda, and very little do the people that are living in these areas count. In that sense, I'm so proud that we haven't participated in signing an agreement, but that's been a difficult stand to hold.
The stand has caused divisions and frustrations in the community. Lobster is the only viable fishery left in southwest Nova Scotia, and without government money, no one in Bear River has the $1 million it takes to buy a boat and license. Things on the water got very tense in the years following the Marshall decision. But despite that tension, Bear River reached out to local fishing groups to find a middle ground.
I grew up in this area, and I knew that there was a native community in Bear River, but I mean, you know, what I knew about native life and, you know, their traditions and their customs was absolutely nothing. I mean, you know, I'm almost ashamed to say it, that I didn't know anything, but that's the way it was within a lot of, if not most of our fishing communities. We knew of the native community, and that's it.
We wanted to find some place that we could sit in with non-native fishermen that wouldn't be too hostile. And the Marine Resource Center at Cornwallis was that place.
There were some of these older, you know, rough, big fishermen sitting around this table on the reserve. It was just amazing to see. You've heard the expression, you know, you could cut it with a knife. There was so much tension in the air. Well, in reality, that's what it felt like.
Well, a lot of them thought that we would go out and, you know, rape whatever we could out of the water, and but we showed them that that wasn't what we were there to do, to go out and try and get all we could get.
I think if it ever got to the point where they were going to go fishing, they were going to go fishing regardless, because it's their right. It was their right. The Supreme Court of Canada said they had the right to fish. So, I mean, regardless, they were going to fish, but they were looking for the help and the support, I guess is the right words, from the non-native community, so that they could avoid any of this stuff that had happened in other areas, you know? Mm-hmm. And I think the non-native fishermen realized that. They seen that. They realized that these guys weren't going to, rape and pillage the industry. I mean, honestly, that was such a ridiculous idea. I mean, how could a handful of boats, do more damage than what's already been done to the fisheries, right?
After working more than a year to establish a dialogue, the two groups made a historic breakthrough in the spring of 2003.
We approached the Bay of Fundy Marine Resource Center again, get some of these lobster fishermen together. We want to just temporarily go out in Area 34 and get some lobster. And it was like, no problem. Tell us what you need. We didn't have to make a telephone call for DFO. The non-native fishermen had made that phone call and said, you let Bear River out on the water. And there was no answer, ifs or buts, so we had that temporary. It was a lot of hard work, but that's how it happened.
With non-native fishing groups supporting Bear River, DFO had little choice but to accept their demands for 2 weeks of self-managed commercial fishing.
How you doing? Jim McKinnon? Hi, Hubert. I think I mentioned before down. How you doing? Okay, so we've got 2 sets of licenses, 2 sets of tags. Okay. 2 logbooks.
Commercial fishery.
It's okay because Tim said it was okay.
Yeah.
Normally we go through a different process.
I know.
But this is special circumstances, and I'm not.
Tim called me, he said it was okay. I just wanted to go over it as long.
It's been such a long road before where we wouldn't go to DFO for anything, and we just go and do it. And it felt good to go in and actually get tags given to us and logbook and have it all written down and stuff. Yeah.
It was just such a sense of relief because it was so tense up to that point. And then when the boys had finally started going out, it was a historic moment because we were doing that in cooperation with non-native fishermen, and DFO just basically had to toe the line, so to speak. And I remember other chiefs and other leaders and other communities asking, well, how did you do that? You must have signed an agreement. We said, no.
We wanted to challenge DFO. We wanted to come up with our own plan, and we wanted to implement it.
Local support was enough to get Bear River 2 weeks on the water, but it didn't give them the political clout to negotiate an acceptable fishing agreement. So Bear River isn't just reaching out to their neighbors. They're building links with fisher people around the world through their involvement with the World Forum of Fisher Peoples.
In developing countries, small-scale fisher people, Indigenous people, a lot of their small-scale and traditional knowledge is intact. And what I'm scared here in Canada, that as we get consumed and assimilated into these larger processes, those small-scale and traditional approaches will be lost. That's why the World Forum of Fishery People are so important to us. It's the only place that I know that small-scale fisher people are represented. Isn't it ironic that we're here in Canada and we have no really official voice in the so-called democratic country? We have no voice, and that was the only place that we were able to find our voice.
For the past 2 summers, Bubby and Dusty have been exercising their Aboriginal right to fish for food, and they've been distributing their catch to people on the reserve. They have the support of Chief and Council, who've been keeping DFO and local groups informed about the community's food fisheries. They pulled their 20 traps by hand. It's not much compared to the 325 traps that come with a commercial lobster license, or to the boat and gear that would be financed if Bear River signed an agreement. But it's enough to raise concerns at the Department of Fisheries. DFO continues to pressure the band to sign an agreement in exchange for the identification tags it supplies for the traps.
Really good tonight. Oh, we don't know. We're on some craft dinner tomorrow.
Yeah. Given until we can develop what our commercial fishery will look like, we still need our food. And it's very important to us to secure that, more so than ever. We just informed DFO, this is our food fishery, this is what we're doing. They came back and said, well, you can't be fishing out there without tags, at least use our tags. And that's the only thing that we agreed to do with verbally. Once you start developing a relationship over your fishery just with government officials, the local partners or potential partners seems to get ignored, or the process is hijacked pretty soon, no longer doing what is really necessary for the community. And why is this so important, and why is this a major concern? Why not just sign the fishing agreements and so forth? Well, I seen an article here not too long ago where it claimed to have all these fishing jobs, and I'm hearing just the opposite, that you'll find very few First Nations individuals on those fishing boats that are making a livelihood. It's really corporate interests that are fishing for the other bands in most cases.
The non-native fishery here had a lot to learn from Bear River. Their concept of community-based management was surprisingly similar but yet different than what we were talking about as community-based management. Because when they talk about a community fishery, they talk about a community fishery. That, you know, a total sharing of the product that's caught, a sharing of the revenue that's caught. I mean, we don't have that kind of community fishery in the non-native communities.
When you look at Bubby, Robbie, young Fred, they are the hunters, they are the moose hunters, they are the fisher people. And we are now coming to a juncture in this time where that may be lost forever. There's this gap now between the elders and the youth. And it's because our resources are depleting at such a fast rate. Once my generation is gone and once these fishermen are gone, that knowledge, it's gone forever. And when I see Bubby and when I see Robbie and when I see people like this, I see their grandfathers, I see their grandmothers and what they have taught me. And that's going to be gone.
"500 years ago, when our people met the non-native fishermen that came here in these waters that we looked after for centuries, you know, and we still have the capability to work with the non-native fishing groups to maintain and look after the waters today, given that chance. We just need a chance to prove that we can do that the same way our ancestors did. But there has to be some give and take.
Walking around in Digby before, I used to get comments that people made, you know, native fishermen's not supposed to be on the water and blah, blah, blah. It was kind of scary going to Digby because, you know, you meet up with 4 or 5 different fishermen that are all angry at you while you could get hurt. Now, it's nothing to go down on the wharf. A lot of people are wave and say hello and smile at you, and the relations are actually getting very good for us.
The fact of the matter is, this whole traditional territory of ours, there's several groups in it, and we are suffering in one way with our colonial oppression. Those other groups are suffering too with other forms of corporate exploitation. But the people that live in this area, I think it's important that we have some type of collaborative effort and saying no more.